Greetings, Taco Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another The Flash episode review right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly, and as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's The Flash episode review. And this is my review of Season 2, Episode 20, entitled Rupture. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. This was another mixed episode for me. Another mixed bag, because there were a couple of things I thought the episode did really well, a couple of things I thought were more middle of the road, and a couple of things I thought just didn't work out at all. And I'll go ahead and address each one of those throughout this review. So first, let's start with what I thought worked well in the episode. Number one, Henry's back. I mentioned in my review last week that I was excited to see Henry return to the series, and in hindsight, I could definitely see the void that was sort of created without him being present. You know, Henry, even though he is a small supporting role, the heart, the emotion, the character that he brings to the series that was present in season 1, we didn't get that this season. And I think it was a mistake to have him absent for so long, especially since now in this episode they revealed that Henry's moving back to Central City. So I have to question the decision, because if you remember at the beginning of this season, it was almost as if they were writing him out of the show, because he was like, oh, I'm out of Iron Heights now, and I want to travel, I want to see some things. It seemed like Henry wouldn't be coming back. And so granted, I think this was a good point to bring him back given the nature of this episode's conflict, but at the same time I can't help but think, like, man, if Henry had stuck around through some of the stuff that happened this season, I think the story would have panned out much better. But Henry returns in this week's episode, and he is, once again, like I said, the heart. He brings that moral center, that moral ground for the question of whether or not the team should recreate the particle accelerator explosion in order to get Barry his powers back. And he even brings up the question of whether or not Barry even needs his powers anymore to be happy, to feel fulfilled, to feel significant. All of these, pretty much the tough questions, but the questions that are rooted more from here and not so much from here. If anything, I would say that having Henry back, especially seeing him contrast with Joe and seeing him contrast with Harry, how Harry is sort of, Harry sort of operates out of here, and Henry operates entirely out of here, and then Joe, of course, is somewhere in the middle. So that trichotomy that has been given to us this episode by these three father figures that Barry has, and I actually think that was the best, like that three-way argument that they had almost halfway through the episode. That I thought was the best scene of the episode. That was fantastic, and I love having Henry back in that episode. So that was the first thing I thought was done really well. The second thing, and I actually will give this episode props, the recreation of the particle accelerator explosion. In hindsight, I actually like the fact that it took the entire episode before they actually decided to do it. I like that the characters weren't just gun-ho about it, that they weren't reckless, that they actually addressed all of the problems, all of the issues, all of the hazards, all of the collateral damage, all of the negative effects, all of the consequences and repercussions that could happen for them recreating that explosion. Once again, it creates that contrast, that division, how, once again, we see Harry when he's obsessed, when he's hell-bent on an objective, and how that contrasts with Barry and the rest of the team, once again. That I thought was done really well, and it's kind of funny because going into this episode, I did think it was a little contrite. I'm like, oh, we're just going to magically, we're just going to recreate the explosion, and Barry's going to get his powers back, and everything's going to be all hunky-dory and back to normal. But no, the fact that they presented the legitimate problems with that I think, I give the writers kudos for that one. Kudos for that one. And then even the explosion itself, once again, unforeseen consequences and repercussions. Barry vanished at the end of the episode, and the team, they assume that he's dead. But apparently it seems like Barry has been transported to another dimension or maybe even to another Earth. We don't really know because that's going to be revealed to us in the next episode. But just the fact that it didn't go off without a hitch and it didn't result the way that they thought it would, okay, I kind of dug that. Also, you want to talk about collateral damage. Probably the coolest thing, the best thing about it is that this is how Wally and Jesse gets their powers now. So now we know how do Wally and Jesse become speedsters? That's how. And you know, it's kind of funny because in the episode when Joe pretty much went ahead and put Wally and Jesse in that panic room, like I was like, why are they even there? Like, you can't tell me that that is any more safe, that place is more safe than anywhere else. Why? Because we've seen people infiltrate Star Lab on a regular basis. But now I see, no, it had more to do with the fact of them being there so that they could get the effects of the particle accelerator explosion. That's why they were there. So, okay, that makes sense. Also, what I liked about it was that, you know, they brought up something really interesting. And I think the writers, okay, now they have an opportunity to build up on this and to really sort of take it to the next step. They brought up something I never considered. The fact that the particle accelerator explosion on Earth 2 was contained, right? But the one on Earth 1 wasn't. And because of that, they actually revealed in this episode that there are legions of metahumans that they don't know about. Because when Harry pretty much shows them the information that he gathered from all of the metahumans on Earth 2, he says, this is the list of metahumans that we know of on Earth 2, and my explosion was contained. Yours wasn't. So actually there are many more metahumans than you think they are, and they just haven't revealed themselves. Why? Because Flash, operating as he has been in Central City, he pretty much was a deterrent for them. You know, they felt that, you know, they were reluctant to reveal themselves because they knew there was a countermeasure. Now that Flash is presumably out of the picture, all of a sudden these metahumans are going to start to surface. So that's really cool. And the reason why I bring that up is because the one thing this season lacked that I think brought a lot of charm and a lot of humor and a lot of the comic book sort of enthusiasm to season 1 was the fact that we dealt with the rogues. We haven't really dealt with rogues this season. So, you know, once again, it's that thing that we used to have in season 1, we don't have in season 2. There's a void there. So now this does open up the potential for us to get back to that in season 3. So that I thought was good. Now, middle of the road issue. This, I won't necessarily say it was done poorly, but it certainly wasn't explored the way it could have been. The fact that Rupture, you know, Cisco's brother, his doppelganger on Earth 2 is a villain, just like Cisco's doppelganger, Reverb, is a villain. And he gets introduced to us in this episode. And it is, you know, I was questioning, okay, like, I knew immediately who his identity was, because why else would Cisco go and look up his brother, who we haven't seen since season 1, out of the blue? He vibes his brother. Why would that happen unless that was going to play a role in this episode's plot? And sure enough, that's because Rupture is his brother's doppelganger. Okay, that was cool, right? I thought that was a cool idea. Here's the problem, though. Rupture gets taken out in this episode. So by the end of the episode, he really did sort of feel like a throwaway villain, like he was, you know, another metahuman of the week, if you will. And that I think was a misstep. That I think was misfortunate. I think they should have used him as the main villain for an entire episode. Like, he should have had his whole own episode where he was the main villain and not just working at the behest of Zoom, even if he was working for Zoom. Like, I think he could have anchored an episode by himself, and it would have given us time to really sort of go back and explore Cisco and his brother's relationship. It would have given us an opportunity to examine what their relationship is after the events of season 1, and it would have helped play into what I think should have been Cisco's subplot this entire season, and that was the whole thing of him dealing with the fact that he is a metahuman, especially after he finds out about Reverb. So my thing is like, Rupture should have had his own episode, and it should have been much earlier in the season. And it should have Cisco and his brother should have been the focus of the episode. And then finally, the two things that just did not work in this episode at all. Number one, Iris confessing her love for Barry completely didn't work. Came out of nowhere. I really did get the feel that the only reason why it's in this episode is because the writers are trying to fulfill a quota. Like, oh, we need to get Barry and Iris together by the end of the season, or at least start to set that up by the end of the season. I'll be honest with you guys, I could have completely done without the Barry and Iris thing this season. Number one, because they haven't been doing it for the most part. Number two, because Barry had a girlfriend earlier in this season. Iris was supposed to be dating her editor. I guess they just dropped that completely. And let's face it, she is still grieving over Eddie, is she not? I mean, he hasn't even been dead a year yet. So, like, the whole Iris thing, like, that was just shoehorned in, and it didn't work out at all. The second thing, Zoom. The more he shows up in this show now, after that god-awful episode from 2 weeks ago, they completely ruined that character, in my opinion, and it's really, like, I really do get the feeling like Zoom has turned into a Legend of Korra villain. He had so much hype and so much build-up at the start of the season, and then after we got the reveal, after we got the backstory, everything he's done since, how they've written him since in this latter part of the season has just been god-awful. His motivations don't make no damn sense. His actions don't make no damn sense. I can't even take him seriously anymore. He is written at like a bad comic book villain. And, I mean, oh, God. I really am just waiting for this season to hurry up and be over with so we don't have to deal with Zoom anymore, because they just destroyed that character. They had a prime time opportunity to really make a menacing, I mean, before the break, Zoom was a menacing villain. He was he topped Eobard. He topped Reverse Flash. You know what I'm saying? And once we found out his identity, once we started getting into his head, it all went to hell in a handbasket. So at this point, I don't think there is anything they can do to sort of correct that. I don't think there's anything they can do at this point to fix that. I think we just need to hurry up and just get him out of the way, because that whole thing is just terrible. Terrible. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this week's The Flash episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. In the comments below, please leave your thoughts on this week's episode. Let me know what do you guys think about the preview for next week's episode. What do you think we're dealing with next week's episode? Is this an alternate dimension, another Earth? What the hell happened to Barry? Please leave those thoughts in the comments below, and leave any of your thoughts about anything I addressed in this review in the comments below. If you like this review, please thumb it up, share it with other fans of the show and people you think would enjoy this review. And if you have yet to do so, subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. Annotation is above head. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.